Just thought I'd give a little update since the last time we talked after the spring game. So really last week, just sat down and probably one of my enjoyable times of the year. I'll sit down and interview everybody on our roster at the conclusion of the fall season or the start of the spring semester, depending on how it plays out with the end of the season and how they go into winter break if I don't have time after a hopefully successful season if you get postseason play. So I'll usually do it in December, January, and then I always do it after spring ball is complete, an exit interview, just to kind of get a lay of the land with each individual kid. It's really been beneficial for me this time because even being around these kids since, the start of the semester, a lot of times this was my first really true just one-on-one with them in my office. I get a chance to ask them their history, their background, a little bit of how they got here, but also going way back to when they started football, who got them involved, family members. I'd had those conversations with quite a few guys, but not everybody from A to Z. So a really enjoyable week for me. Was able to get through that. They also sat down and talked with their position coach. Offensive players talked with Coach Peterson. Defensive players talked with Coach Walters. Special teams and specialists talked with Coach Ben Miller. So really an all-encompassing week for our guys. They also have a checkout process that they go through that kind of was new to them, where they literally have to go through the every department that they touch, right? So Tank and his crew, they met with either Tank or one of his coaches to check out for the semester. Equipment room with either Trent or Clint, in a training room with Jeremy or one of his crew members. And then of course, academically with the academics to sign off before they were able to get out of town with finals and where their standing was going into the summer and into fall. And then finally with either Tim Knox or Mark Torsani, our operations crew, that gives them the final sign off before they get out the door. So all of that was behind us, had some great interviews. For me, it was really rewarding. Just kind of wrap up where we're at. And then really the majority of our kids, I would say, are finishing up their finals from home or here on campus. A lot of guys had different schedules. Let that kind of be in their hands if they checked all the boxes. Just a different time, right? With COVID, from going all the way back a year ago through the fall, through the spring, and not being able to get home very much. We wanted to allow our guys to get home as fast as they could. So the majority of them got through through that process and got out of here. So they won't come back. We'll start up 1st of June with an 8-week program that'll lead us into a week where they have a chance to get home again right before we start up with fall camp, really the 1st of August. That'll take us into that week 0 game against Nebraska. So really, other than that, cleaned up with injuries. A couple guys had procedures, but for the most part, we should have a pretty healthy football team coming back when we start June. A majority of our guys that missed the spring, a lot of them will be working back into, if not full go workouts with Tank and his crew. They'll be modified in a little bit, but everything seems to be a great indicator. We'll have everybody up and running for that first week of August when we start fall camp. So really, other than that, just been grinding away with recruiting, not only the 2021, 2022, 2023, 24. Obviously had a lot of changes as far as just recruiting and camps and evaluations. Some new things came at us with the NCAA. Had a Big Ten meeting last Thursday that was with our coaches and athletic directors. It was a lot of good information to move forward. So really looking forward for this month of May to get everything in line. And the month of June is going to be a huge month for us as a staff. So with that, open up for any questions.
Hey, Bret, hope you're well. I was told you could talk about your transfer quarterback. Is that correct?
Yeah, Art. Yes, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was it about Art, and what was it about your quarterback room that you wanted to bring him in?
Yeah, Art had such a great, I'm sorry, Jeremy, for clarification there. So what Art has done is Art is a transfer that has signed a financial tender, which allows us to now comment on him. There are some other players that are in that same world that just haven't signed or we haven't signed to certain paperwork, and that prohibits me from commenting on them. But Art did fill that out and send that back, so we're able to comment. I really wanted to get through spring ball. The quarterback position, because so much attention has been paid to it. I really want to get through the spring, see where we're at, and kind of understand where we were coming out of it. And because of the timing of Art, really, he came into the portal there, and I think that last week, if I'm not mistaken, that last week while we were still involved in spring practices. He's a guy that I was made aware of, just because I knew the name from the recruiting process. And then obviously his story here in the Big Ten, in the East Side, obviously, but really coming in as a guy that has 3 years of eligibility. Felt it was a good mix for us in the QB room. Like his, obviously, his skill set, going back to his high school days, and then obviously thrown into the fire there at Rutgers, and did some good things that you can see on film, and obviously things that he wants to move forward on. So after a few conversations with him and an understanding of where we were in the QB room, he decided to jump in, and he should be here. We're still working on the final details of that, but I think he'll be here with us from day one, starting in June, to work through up until fall camp and have immediate eligibility, just like all the other transfer rules.
Obviously, that rough freshman year thrown in the fire, as you said. What did you like about what you saw the last 2 years with him?
Well, I would say two things. You get a chance to meet with him, and I'm sure you guys have had certain interactions or saw him. He's a very poised, confident. He's a guy that I think is not above learning from his mistakes. We had a couple conversations about, you define moments bigger by your moments of adversity than you are by success. I think the change of venue and the opportunity to come into this system is going to be something he's very excited about. All you can do about the past is look at it, right? And you got a chance to grow from it. We weren't there with him during that phase, and he wasn't with us. Got a whole new situation to walk into here, and hopefully put his best foot forward. Excited to get another good quality person in our program.
How does he impact that room with Brandon and Isaiah? How does he impact those guys?
I think, again, the quarterback position gets a lot of attention. In my interviews with those guys individually, we talk about that, the quarterback position, a lot of times when you have success, get way too much praise. And when you have failure, you get way too much blame. So as a head coach, I'm always going to try to shoulder that blame for them. But I would really say the quarterback room is no different from any other room, right? So I brought in CJ Hart to the linebacker room. We brought in Fraser Hudson to the DB room. We're going to bring in some other transfers into a tight end room. We're going to bring in other transfers into the safety room again, to the wide receiver room. I think anytime you can add players of value and bring in guys with high value as well as high character, that's going to be nothing but welcomed in the room.
Thanks, Bret.
Yep.
Coach, I'm curious about these meetings that you have with players. Obviously, when there's the coaching change, a scheme change, there are going to be some fits. I came here to run this offense. I don't really run that. I'm this kind of guard. I'm not that kind of guard. Were there honest conversations with some guys, or do you see it like that? Or is it everyone can help? There's no fit. Is it, hey, we want everybody here and competing for spots?
Yeah, Robert, great question. I would say this, obviously the players would be the greatest indicator of what they say or felt. I don't want to speak on someone else's behalf. As a head coach, I'm pretty blatant, pretty blunt, to the point. We definitely had conversations about where they stood in a positional room, like in a depth chart wise, but also big picture where we see things are going or what they can become. Talked really about what I saw during spring ball, but more importantly, what we think we can see in the future. There were some conversations that probably they didn't want to hear by certain guys, but others, I think, reinforced maybe what they did want to hear. So it's probably kind of a mixed bag of everything. We talked about position changes for certain guys. We talked about guys that had changed and where they were going to stay and where guys might move to. So really, it was, and then just from big picture, I'm not oblivious to the fact that we're in a transfer world, right? The transfer portal, grad transfers. But I had a feeling when we had 21 super seniors come back and want to be a part of this, that things were going in the right direction. I would say after interviewing 100 plus, I think I had 102 interviews. No one told me, in that meeting that they were going to leave. We have had a couple of non-scholarship players that are going to probably explore other opportunities, but nobody on scholarship. And I told our coaches that's a great indication of what you're building. I don't know where it's going to go. And, most of the times in transition, I look around the league and I see other schools that have gone through either transition now or in the last year and look at the transfer portal numbers at some of those other institutions. And they're huge numbers. And I think about what we're doing here and why that's happening. I think our kids want to be a part of something. and they don't want to miss it. It was overwhelmingly a lot of really positives, a lot of good handshakes, hugs, and goodbyes, and wish you well in May and see you back in June. So it was overall pretty good experiences.
Also, since this is maybe the last time we'll talk to you before the fall camp, I just wanted to ask you about how you do it. Obviously, coaches here before have done different things. It's been a camp up in Rantoul at a military base. Lovey wanted to have it on campus at athletic fields. How have you always done training camp? How do you approach it? What's your plan for the fall?
Robert, it's really it's an answer that's really still, I think, shaped largely by COVID, to be quite honest, because of protocols, not only within our state, within our county, within the university, what you got to do and where we are as a program. There's some new NCAA legislation that allows us to have one-day evaluations on 2022 and 2021, as well as 2-year and 4-year transfers. So that opens up a huge window where you can have kids one-on-one individually on campus for evaluations. That right away jumped out to me. So literally the whole month of June and the last week of July, we can try to have as many of those as humanly possible, and we will do that. You get 10 camp days just like everybody else in the country, but I've been a little bit reserved on trying to plan out those days. There's days that are already being formulated by people around the country, that some of them are priority recruiting areas in the state as well as outside the state, that send our coaches to and let them take evaluation days. Well, we can have our guys have major, a full-blown campus camps on our campus in June and July, but because of restrictions and rules, that's limited to a very small number compared to what numbers could normally be, as well as some protocols would have to be in place, would make it really hard to evaluate players. So the world that we're in right now going into this fall or this summer with camps is largely affected about what we're finding literally out on a daily basis with COVID. Immunizations, new rules, new laws, new procedures are literally coming at us all day long. And then you throw on top of that, in the month of June, we'll have official visits, right? So now 2022 prospects will be coming to campus where we can pay for them, and it's a little bit more registered, a little bit more structured with their parents. So these kids haven't been on campus for over a year and a half. So that's going to open up some floodgates of recruiting that is unprecedented, I think, in college football. So there's really about 2 or 3 different things going on, and we'll just kind of sort our way through it. I had a big meeting today. We'll formulate some more thoughts tomorrow with our coaches. I think we have a game plan on what we're going to do, but I haven't quite came out with the announcement just because I want to do what's best for the University of Illinois.
Good, thanks.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, I'm sure when you came in, new team, you kind of had an idea of what this roster could potentially accomplish, bringing in a new coaching staff and everything. Now that you've actually gone through the spring, how has your kind of mindset changed on what can be accomplished with this group and how things have kind of started to come together?
Nico, it's evolved definitely, mainly because of the completion of spring ball. I had not had a chance, to work football drills, football one-on-one, a scrimmage-like situation that we had on Monday Night Football, 14 other practices where I could make evaluations. We ultimately ended on that Saturday with kind of a hardcore, what a Wednesday type practice during game week would look like for us going into that opener against Nebraska. So I've been able to have guys play certain positions where they had been playing. We also moved some guys around. So it's really been a complete evaluation of the roster. Really think we're going to add a few more key pieces this summer through guys that we've currently already committed or recruited, but also the transfer world's bringing a lot of opportunities literally on a daily basis to us here in the football program. So I'm excited. I don't know what it means or where it's going to be, but I think this football team is one that has proven to me they're very hungry. They're very coachable. I think they're anxious and eager for 2021 season to get here and see where it can go.
Even with some more possible roster changes pending, what would you say is a position group on both sides of the ball that really stood out to you that you can kind of, build that offense and defense success around next fall?
I think O-line and D-line, it kind of always starts there, right? I mean, I think for me as a head coach, the fundamental of what we believe and stand for, you have to win the game up front. I've said repeatedly, and I mean this, right? For tough teams do 3 things. They run the football, they stop the run, and they cover kicks. So I think fundamentally for us to run the football and stop the run, that starts with our offensive and defensive lines, there's no doubt. And then to cover kicks, that's really your punt team and your kickoff coverage unit. Those guys, those units involve guys that can run with intensity and make tackles. So that'll be the foundation of it, but just looking at, position changes that took place this spring. Well, Beeson will stay at wide receiver. Marchese will be at tight end. I have asked Cooper Davis. He's going to move from outside linebacker to tight end. Cumby will stay at running back. Caleb Griffin will stay with the wide receiver kicker combination. Mark Mondesir will be outside linebacker. Ben Schultz will be at outside linebacker. Preston Engel will be at tight end. Dylan Thomas will be at safety. And then obviously the addition and transition of some transfer in the coming weeks will be a big deal. So I'm excited where that's at. And it's definitely a group that, saw some things that they did, made some suggestions to guys that about moving positions, and they jumped at it, and for the most part converted on a big scale.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
Hi, Coach. Good to see you. Back to the quarterback position real quick. Can you walk me through the process of you and Coach Peterson looking at the position group this spring, why you felt you needed to add someone from the portal, and then among those position changes, you didn't mention Isaiah Williams. What's the specific plan for him? Is he going to play quarterback or move to a different spot?
No, that'll be. I've had a couple conversations with Isaiah, and he's going to announce it on his terms. But Isaiah will be a wide receiver for us moving forward. So that kind of obviously changes the dynamics of that room. Really thought that throughout the course of the spring, BP really did a nice job of adjusting to this offense and what we were asking him to do, highlighted by what he did in that Thursday night. But I let him have it pretty good on a couple of those practices after the spring game, because he's nowhere close to what we need to be. Just consistency where the ball needs to be, how we got to get things done, and bring things out of him. So I'm really excited where BP's at. But to bring in a guy that's played in the Big Ten, a guy that's been in this league with Art, I think can obviously bring immediate competition to that room. Isaiah with his transition to wide receiver, it was just something I think that he and I discussed and eventually evolved to. And then when we got done with the game, he just wanted to kind of go out and take a couple days to look at it. And it was very impressive in those 3 practices after the spring game. And he decided to make that move, that transition. I know he's going to get that out there on his own terms. Let him comment to that. And then really with the rest of the room, with Deuce, with Matt and with Karan, talk very openly where they're at and what they can do. And obviously with Isaiah gone, that changes that room dynamically for them coming into fall camp. And we'll just kind of see where that plays out from here on.
And you talked about still taking a look at the portal through the course of the summer. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but are there some other specific position groups that you're looking to enhance a little bit before fall camp opens up?
Doug, we're constantly always looking for players that can help us win a Big Ten championship. I think there's 3 priorities I always look for, right? Someone that is a position of value for us, somebody that, not only the thing about these transfers is now you're looking at 1 year, obviously, but your majority of these guys are 2 and 3 year transfers. So they can give immediate value or depth at a position maybe that wasn't, developed as full as we had hoped. Or after spring ball coming out of it, we need a little bit more here or there. It also can be specific things like if you're looking for a certain type of wide receiver, if you're looking for a certain type of tight end or a certain type of DB or a certain type of outside, inside linebacker, you can get very specific on the pool of guys that are in there. So that's the first thing. The second thing is anybody that's from the state of Illinois or really in our surrounding area that we can kind of consider in-state, even though, we may, an area might be not typically within the state lines of Illinois, but we treat it like an in-state recruiting area for us. That is one that always jumps out to anybody that's from Illinois that can help Illinois win a Big Ten title will definitely be open. And the third thing is they just got to, stand for a certain level of what we expect in this program. I think when you bring somebody in as a transfer, you can't have the guys that you've recruited or the high school players you're recruiting looking around saying, where did this guy come from and why is he here? I think it has to make sense on every level with not only our players and coaches.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, good to see you again. Just want to follow up on Isaiah there since you mentioned, I know you said you'll let him speak for himself, but we've talked about what he can bring to the table as a quarterback. So what do you feel he's going to bring to the table for this team as a wide receiver now?
You know, the things that I think Isaiah brings regardless of what position he's playing. He's an incredible leader. He's got great magnetic energy. Anything that I've seen him do, he just does it with a lot of intensity and attitude. I've only seen him through 3 practices at wide receiver, and really one of those days was a very limited practice. So I can't stress the value of what he brings as a person. He's extremely high football IQ. So I think at wide receiver, the advantage he brings there is just he's literally been playing quarterback, you know, for a large portion of his career here as of late, and to line up as a wide receiver, knowing what he knows at quarterback, but also then going against defensive backs. Here's someone who has had unbelievable amount of experience game prepping, looking at defensive backs and what they do, and now he brings that to the wide receiver position. Is that value is you can't put a price tag on.
And we thought him back in March or maybe early April. Don't know if you have an update on Mike Epstein at all. Anything you can say about his status at this point?
No, it's I think still a to be determined. You know, there's a lot of things in play there. You know, from him and his future, and talking with people on our campus on a variety of different levels.
Thank you, Brett.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, last week when we spoke with Coach Patterson, he spoke a lot about how much he's grown and how much he's learned from you. What kind of growth have you seen in him as a coach in the last couple of months?
Well, you know, first and foremost, I would say that the flip side of that, as a head coach, I've learned a lot from Coach Patterson. I think as a coach, one of the great things you can do is hire a group of 10 assistant coaches that make you better, right? And Corey has been no disappointment in that regard. He's got a vast amount of knowledge, especially I think when we're talking about relationship with high school coaches and you know, recruiting. It's obviously he's been able to recruit his entire life, whether he was in youth league football, high school football, or now in college football. He's got a great way of relating with people. I think the part that I've been impressed with is you know, switching to now the running back position. You can see the daily detail. I literally got a printout every day in my box or a lesson plan of what his intention, what his goal was on the running backs that day during individual periods. We would watch them, look at them, observe them. Just a lot of detail to that. I think he was learning, obviously, how to coach the running backs, but also learning a new offense and working with a group of people he had never been around before. So the feeling is mutual. I've learned a lot from him. But I will say this, you know, I told every one of my coaches when I walked in the building, when I started talking to them about jobs, I said, listen, we're going to build a staff here off of great people, first and foremost. They're going to be consistent in what they do and want sustained success, like Josh and I talked about from day one. And I think Corey fills that gap in everything.
Coach Patterson also mentioned how grateful he was for you to give him the opportunity to stay on staff and how he has now an opportunity to continue to prove himself as a coach. How much do you think his work ethic has really helped him since you guys have started this new venture together?
Well, CP he's got a high work ethic, high energy. You know, a lot of times when you bring in coaches from all over the country, they're coming without their families, right? So they you know, work long hours, come here early morning, stay late. Corey's got, you know, a young family, a beautiful wife, transitioning within a home here. And I would say he was here as early as anybody and here as late. And then I'd get after hour updates and recruiting and information all day long, all night long. So yeah, his work ethic is outstanding. But I would say I also learned a lot too, right? So when I was a young buck, I was basically in my second year, third year, maybe, I guess now, as an inside linebacker coach at the University of Iowa. And that's when Hayden Fry retired and Kirk Ferentz came in. And when Kirk came in, he kept me and one other coach. That coach left after 1 year, and then I was the remaining one holdover. The other one was Chuck Long. And I remember the faith, trust and Kirk had in me to you know, pass what I had known, but also more importantly, what I could bring his staff. And I wouldn't have made that decision to hire or keep Corey here in the building if I didn't believe that was going to be the case. And that's what it's been 100 times over. I would say that him, obviously Pat Embleton has been a huge asset to our program. That was a big part of what they've done in the past to bring it forward. Tim Knox, guys in the equipment room with Trent and Clint, with Jeremy in the training room. There was a lot of guys that we were able to retain and keep in the building here that had a huge effect on what we've been able to get done to this point.
And then one last quick one. I think when Coach came, a lot of people saw him as just a recruiter. He made it very clear that he wants to be known as more than just a recruiter. Outside of his work ethic, what's made him an impressive on-field coach for you?
Kevin A is very intelligent. He was a good college player. I think that was probably because he was really smart, had great football IQ, and played himself into a position. I'm not saying that he wasn't a good athlete. I'm sure he would probably argue with me, but a lot of times you get coaches that maybe they were great players because they were young coaches in the works, right? They knew things a little bit better. They knew how to get things done a little bit quicker, a little bit more efficiently. I think the addition of him and Ryan and Andy Boo and Aaron Henry and Terrence Jamison, those 5 guys on the defense side of the ball have bonded very quickly. They all recognize the strengths and the weaknesses of each other. Kevin's got a little bit of a double-edged sword because he's actually coaching a position that I just got done coaching in the league. So I've got a lot of input into him that I throw at him. He's been a sponge in that regard. He's got some very good players to work with, but Kevin just thinks outside of the box, right? He sees things coming before they're in front of him. He's got good vision, relates really well with players. He's a high energy guy that brings great passion to his room. I think our players recognize right away he's a guy they want to be around. And then I would say this, offensive players gravitate to Kevin just as much as the defensive guys. And that always says something to me as a head coach to kind of see that transition from both sides.
Thanks, Coach. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Hey, Brett, good afternoon. I'm curious, with Marquez staying at wide receiver, Isaiah moving there, those are 2 guys who were ranked pretty highly coming out of high school, obviously had both done different things in their first couple of years of college, but potential-wise, how can that, I don't want to say reshape, but maybe bolster that receiving room with guys like, those athletes?
Yeah, Joey, good question. I fortunately wasn't around for all of that. So really the way they were rated or ranked coming in here doesn't play anything into the effect of what I think of them now. I think it was very easy to see with Beeson, especially during winter conditioning, just seeing him move even though they were in defensive drills, you could see a very fluid athlete, very intelligent player. And I think the one thing that Coach Mitchell made reference to right away is that Beast is a guy that literally as soon as he came in the room, he just got it very quickly. He's got that it factor to him in the wide receiver room, comes a little bit more natural to him. I think he wanted it, which greatly factored into it. But I would say Beast, and he wasn't quite there physically yet. That's why we couldn't play him a little bit more in the spring game. He's a guy that, the stock value is high in. I think you would think that he's got a lot coming at him in a short amount of time with great potential at a new position. Isaiah is extremely gifted, athletic, quick burst. They both kind of have different skill value. Yes, they're both wide receiver, but in our system, there's really 3 to 4 different wide receiver positions, and each one of those guys kind of fits a different mold. So they won't be stacked on top of one another, but I think both of them have a lot of value in our offense.
And then I'm curious with these exit meetings, you mentioned being a little just blunt, I guess, with some of these guys. Do you shape like the conversations with specific guys? I mean, I know you've only known them for 4 or 5 months, but do you kind of pull back on some, or is it pretty much a straight baseline across the board?
It's probably pretty straight. Really kind of just talk about, I usually always start with academically. We meet every Thursday with our academic people. I have an academic report in my hands every Thursday that is most up-to-date information on a weekly basis. And also, so the report I was working off of was from last Thursday, but we'll get daily updates at 2:00. So literally every day I get feedback on where they stand academically, because our number one priority is for them to, obviously have academic and athletic success here. So that's usually a breaking point. Then I'll kind of go into what got them here, right? If I didn't know their story, family background, parent background. We have an Illini Mother's Week going on right now. So we'd ask a lot of these guys to, if they would wanted to express a Mother's Day message to their mom, both through social media, through our Illinois football webpage. So it kind of brought that full circle, just the conversations there, what they were going to do in May when they went home. And then I would kind of come back to football, talk about where they were, where we got to go, and any specific points. Like if we think a guy needs to gain a few pounds, if we know a couple got to lose a few pounds, if we feel one needs to make a little bit more emphasis on football IQ. I give guys specific projects, maybe players to watch or players to observe or specific areas. Certain guys, and maybe a quarterback, I'll say, hey, let's concentrate on learning the offense by personnel groupings, by concepts, rather than trying to memorize things. So everybody kind of has their own detail. And then after we were done, I literally sat down and went through 100 plus meetings with our position coaches. And I go through the meeting with the coaches, and all the coaches hear all the different meetings, so even though Kevin Kane's coaching outside backers, he heard about the quarterback meeting, he heard about the wide receiver meeting, he heard about the O-line meeting, because when you have a player and all of a sudden you maybe hear something getting reinforced from a coach that's not in your room, usually, and especially a positive reinforcement, that goes a long way to confidence. And that's probably what we do more than anything.
And then if I could, one more, you mentioned the Mother's Day thing you have going. I know you've been hesitant to see your family over the course of the last, year or whatever. Do you have plans? I mean, A, living closer, B, as we get a little more open as a society?
Yeah, actually, the week after Easter, I was able to go home and see my mom and dad. They had both been vaccinated. I had been vaccinated and had gone through a little make sure everything is right there. So we were able to get home and see my parents and make a little 2.5 hour trek over to P-Town, and didn't see anybody but them. I wasn't able to see my other siblings, but here at the end of June, my parents both celebrate their birthdays the last week of June, and their anniversary is July 1st. So right before my oldest turns 4 on July 8th, we'll get back home for about a 3 or 4 day window there. I'll hopefully get a chance to be around. My mom and dad's 60th wedding anniversary was last year during COVID. We weren't able to celebrate it as a family, so hopefully we're going to be able to do that with all the proper things in place. So, yeah, we're getting a little more family time, and I really encourage our kids as well, right? So they went home. A lot of different things swirling around right now, from immunizations to COVID testing to all the things that are going through their minds when they go back home. So a lot of things could change before June 1 when they come back.
Thank you, Bret.
Yep.
Coach, you said 60 years?
60 years, yep.
That's unreal. Congratulations.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Thank you.
You've had a lot of the guys that moved positions over the years. Who's the one or two guys that jump in your head? Well, guess what? But that really made that great transition, like you hope these guys are going to make.
Are you talking guys here or
guys before? You guys
before?
Yeah.
There's a couple that jump out to me. One of the first ones I'll never forget. I had a young linebacker that was actually a walk-on for me. He was a linebacker that we got to walk on at the University of Iowa. He changed directions really well. He was unbelievable burst. He was really good on special teams, but he couldn't read a guard pull to save his, he just couldn't see things as they laid out as a linebacker and needed to. So when Kirk came in, I just said, hey, I think this guy could transition to tight end and be pretty good. And his name was Dallas Clark, went on to be one of the best tight ends to ever play in the league. And it just right away showed me like someone who couldn't get on the field as a linebacker. And it wasn't like we had a lot of depth issues or anything. He just didn't process it. As soon as the thing that jumped out to me is Dallas was incredibly gifted in speed, IQ, and football awareness with the ball. Like he caught everything. And it was literally, he went from being a third, fourth inside linebacker struggling to get on the field except for special teams to a standout tight end. And it showed me how quickly someone could change the math on what they were doing. And the next one was a young man, Chris Margos, was a guy that we took as a transfer from Western Michigan at the University of Wisconsin. He was brought to my attention by a kid by the name of Luke Swan. We weren't recruiting him. Luke brought me a videotape. They had gotten together at a basically a Christian-based summer camp. Gave me his tape, watched his tape. I actually reached out to Bill Cubitt, who was the head coach at Western, asked about him, and made the decision to accept him as a transfer. He was a wide receiver. He was doing everything right, everything you would love in a wide receiver, except for he couldn't catch a cold. So I asked him to switch to safety. He didn't really want to do it. I said, why don't you do it during bowl practice? He switched to safety, started, and I believe played 9 years in the NFL and had a Super Bowl ring, and it was a really decorated player. Some other guys that jump out to me, J.J. Watt, we transitioned from O-line tight end to defensive line. There's a couple other kids that, really made huge impacts in a short amount of time during my time as a head coach at Wisconsin and at Arkansas. That it's not just switching a position. Everybody thinks it's just really easy. They have to encompass and embody. And I would tell you the other thing, it has to be their decision. Every one of these young men, when I ask them to do it, they either, say yes or no. If they say yes, they do it. If they say no, I say, okay, just stay where you're at. And eventually they figure it out, or they prove me wrong. Another one was Niles Brinkley, was a wide receiver out of St. Louis, who was a pretty highly recruited kid, was a wide receiver. Again, couldn't, in my opinion, catch it as well as I wanted, but he's really good, gifted, athletic. He could change direction. We moved him to corner. He ended up playing and starting and got a shot in the NFL. So a lot of different things come to mind, but it has to be their decision. I think anytime you try to force somebody into a decision, it never works.
So Isaiah was really receptive to this. Good to go.
What's that?
Was Isaiah receptive to this? Really, it was good to go.
100%. It was something that obviously as soon as I came here, everybody talked about. He and I might have had a discussion early on just about what the opportunities were, but I said with him, I said, let's roll a quarterback, see where we go, and literally never had another discussion about it. There was one day in the spring where I knew he was just he wasn't being him. I saw a guy that wasn't being happy. He's a guy that's happy every day I'm around him. We had a brief conversation and said, let's just continue to roll to see where we're at. And then after the spring game on that Monday night, he and I had a conversation on Tuesday. He said, let's jump into this world and see where we go. And the rest has been history. And I think when you get a chance to hear his side and get a chance to visit with him, you'll see how excited he is.
I got one more real quick, Coach. You had a couple of spring games this last Saturday. Did you get a chance to watch those games, and how much does that help?
Well, fortunately, there's this thing called DVR now where we can actually record all on TV. So I didn't. My Saturday was on the Chicago River with my beautiful wife, spending a day with her. So I love the Kentucky Derby. So we were watching the Derby on my iPad, and then got a little quiet room for her and I to watch the Derby together. And then we ironically had it on the wrong NBC station, so I actually missed the damn Derby, the actual running of the race. But it was well thought out. So we caught that on video replay. So thankfully that worked.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Bret, condolences for missing the Derby there. 2 minutes.
My wife picked the winner though, so we made money. That's all good.
Okay, that's great. Just to clarify, did Isaiah come to you or did you come to him to switch positions?
Well, I would say that as a coach, you recognize when a player wants to talk, right? And I wouldn't say it was me coming to him or he coming to me. I could just see where his mind was, and when the opportunity came for us to sit down and talk together, it wasn't like I summoned him in and said, let's do this or anything like that. I think I just laid out what was in front of him, and he's the one that, eventually said, Coach, I want to do this. And I double checked 2 or 3 times. This is what you want to do? He said, absolutely. Let's see where this can go. And I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'll let you guys, have a conversation with him. But I think he's very excited, to say the least.
Are you more encouraged by what you saw in the players fitting into your system through spring ball, or do you feel like there's a wide gap there of where you need to be in heading towards the fall?
Yeah, I'm very excited where we took them, where they worked. I thought I couldn't ask for a daily approach. There might have been a day, maybe a day and a half, where I felt I had to get in there and speak a little levity to them, to let them know I wasn't happy where we're at. But for the most part, the 2 senior classes led really, really well. Have a sprinkling of underclassmen who got great personality and demeanor. I thought our guys, came to work every day. There was not a lot of any pushback or any negativity from any position group or any side of the ball that I saw. Just guys extremely excited to work. It was interesting, I would say. In the past, apparently they hadn't maximized their allotment of days, 15 spring days. So everybody thought there was a point early in the spring during a winter conditioning period where I had built up that we were going to have a pretty intense Saturday, and I took them bowling for the afternoon and kind of gave them a little cookie, you know, gave them a little love and let them get out of the building. And then for some reason they thought I was going to do the same. So that last Saturday morning practice, it was actually OC came in my office Friday. He and I would usually watch film together on Fridays, and we were watching a NFL comparison tape. I take an outside backer. He and I go through a little film work, and he like looked at me and he goes, "So is tomorrow like a late April Fool's?" I'm like, buddy, tomorrow is, you know, April, whatever day it was. I'm like, no, April Fool's is behind us. He's like, oh, okay. And he smiled. And I'm like, I can promise you, tomorrow is not going to be a day off. So we had a little coming to Jesus meeting with that, and had to tell everybody that we were practicing on Saturday, and they did it. But really, I think it's been a fun, growing experience for them to get to know me, for me to get to know them, and now we'll get the month of May to take a moment, and then I couldn't be more excited for June and July, and then really for August 1st to get here and hit the ground running.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
Brett, it's my understanding the Division I Council meets in a couple of weeks here. I wanted to ask you about what is being referred to as the 9-8-8 model of how these 25 fall practices could actually work. You're shaking your head like you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Do you think that's coming for this fall, or do you think that could be pushed back? But are you prepared for the 9-8-8 model for this fall?
You know what? I'm a big believer in, and I think you guys have heard me say this, just kind of like going into this. I'm not going to say it's the same thing, but it's kind of like when I came here, right? Everybody, you know, it's these COVID rules. It's such difficulty. It's this, it's that, and you just got to flip it, right? Whatever the rules are, just tell me what they are, and I'll try to maximize them or use them to our advantage. And if it ends up being a 9-8-8 model in the fall, that's what it is. If it ends up being a fall from now, that's what it is. One of the great things the NFL experience gave me over the last 3 years, especially the last two, was going into both out of season and fall camp. They had kind of done the same thing already. They had really modified the amount of contact we could have as coaches with the players, the amount of acclimatization, the amount of contacts, the amount of non-padded practices. And as coaches, your coaches are always like, you know, everybody's getting old school and they want to argue with everything that comes out. I just kind of play by the rules and see what it is. Everybody's going to have to play by the same rules. I do think the college game, because there is such a developmental window, the more practices you can have, the better it'll be. I think at the NFL, when you get to a certain level of playing, there's only so much ability that you can continue to grow during fundamental and developmental work. But in college, that growth spike is so big. I would like to have as many practices as they will allow us over a longer amount of time. I don't need, you know, any more padded or full padded or tackle to the ground. We got 3 full scrimmages in this spring. I thought our guys tackled pretty well, you know, given the course of where we're at. Again, you know, we could get down to the Nebraska game and I could have a totally different opinion, but I just think that the fundamental teaching, right? The game of football is played with fundamentals. The game of football is won with fundamentals. And the more we can do that with our guys, whether they're in half pack, no pack, helmets, no helmets, whatever it is, I think it's our responsibility to protect our players a little bit. So I don't like anything that kind of de-pads them. Like I think they should always have their helmets on. I think they should always protect their shoulders just because of collisions and falling down. I don't know if we need to have lower body leg gear on all the time. I put my guys on knee braces all the time, O-line, D-lineman, which doesn't go over very well, but I think it protects them. I do that strictly for safety. So it's a hot topic. There's no doubt about it. I have a strong opinion, but I'm just one of 14 opinions in our conference. And in college football, there's a variety of different committees and different levels that talk about it. I think Pat Fitzgerald does a great job. He represents the Big Ten Conference on a lot of different levels with different committees, and Fitz does a really good job of keeping everybody informed and formulating, everyone's consensus opinion that we come to in our conference.
The one thing I wanted to bring up to you, though, is that it seems to me like these week 0 and week 1 games become sooner and sooner and sooner. And so if you D-pad and you eliminate the amount of days that you can have contact, the argument has been pretty consistent the last few years that those week 0 and week 1 games aren't exactly what you were talking about in terms of fundamentals, the best football you could see. Are you a buyer in that? But it doesn't sound like from your initial response to my question that you can't get what you need to get done with that 988 model. It would seem like you're the other way around.
No, I think you're trying to write your article. I didn't mean it like that. What I was saying is, right, when we get the days, I'll just play by the rules. Actually, in week 0, we get to go earlier than everybody else. It doesn't change our amount of days, right? So whatever the days are, but there is some proposals out there. So the 25 days that we do get, whether they're going to be in a 28-day window, a 32-day window, or a 35-day window, that's what I mean. Like I think that, to go more than 6 days, 6 days in a row without a day off can be detrimental to your players. So that's what I'm arguing for. If we're going to argue for their player safety, then we really ought to make good decisions about what we're doing for them. And sometimes the powers that be aren't always that is informed. They just want to make a decision that makes them look like they're looking for player safety, which everybody's in favor of. There's not going to be one Division I head coach in America that wants to put their players in a bad position, I think, or an unsafe position. There's just a couple different ways to go at it, and also specifically on certain rules that pertain to it.
Thanks, Bret. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Bret, when Calvin Hart Jr. announced he was transferring to Illinois, I think a lot of people assumed that because of his past as an outside linebacker and a really good rusher, he'd fit into that kind of mold. But it seems as though he's been practicing and been fitting in with that inside linebacker group. So what was it about his skills that you and the coaching staff saw that made you guys place him there?
Andy, right? So he actually played both. When he was at NC State, they kind of played a hybrid position as well. He played a little bit off the ball as well as on the ball. And then what we do here fits right into that. And then also, you got to keep in mind too, when we were going through our spring drills here, we probably had 3 to 4 true inside backers that'll be in that rotation that weren't participating, So, there's a number of guys that will be added to that group in the fall at the inside position that can bring a little bit more depth. So CJ's been absolute blessing. Great demeanor, high football IQ, very coachable, great motor, bring in outside juice. Here's a new guy that came in that I think automatically related to a lot of our guys in the locker room. He really, really great environment from his mom and dad, the way they raised him to the things he did at NC State. So couldn't be more pleased. And the thing that he does bring is exactly what you hit on nail on the head. He kind of can play both on and off the ball, which only brings value.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Bret.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Jim, is that a stuffed dog or does that thing actually move? Oh, that's moved. What do you got there? A little teacup?
It's a Shorky.
Shorky. What is that?
Combination Shih Tzu and Yorkie.
Nice. Good looking dog, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bret.
Thanks, man.